Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and ambitious professionals from all corners of the global marketplace, to this comprehensive, deeply transformative, and historically grounded foundational introduction to the full Diploma in Business English audio course. We are embarking today upon an extensive, multi-layered linguistic journey, specifically engineered to elevate your communicative capacity from the level of ordinary, everyday general conversation to the exalted heights of executive corporate mastery, diplomatic precision, and unshakable professional authority. In the contemporary era of unprecedented globalization, commercial interconnectivity, and fast-paced digital exchange, language is no longer merely a basic tool for the casual transmission of thoughts. Rather, it has completely evolved into a vital strategic instrument of economic power, social mobility, and structural leadership. The specific manner in which you construct your sentences, the precise vocabulary you deploy during a high-stakes negotiation, the subtle tone you inject into your digital meetings, correspondence, and the absolute clarity with which you articulate your strategic visions will directly dictate the trajectory of your career, the profitability of your commercial enterprises, and the degree of respect you command within the competitive halls of international industry. Many highly intelligent, technically proficient individuals mistakenly believe that their academic degrees and their operational skills are entirely sufficient to guarantee their long-term success. Yet history and modern corporate metrics continuously demonstrate that a tragic deficiency in professional communication skills acts as an invisible, impenetrable glass ceiling that keeps brilliant minds trapped in lower-level management positions. This extensive diploma course is designed explicitly to shatter that ceiling by providing you with a rigorous, systematic, and highly practical linguistic armor that aligns your speech with your highest professional aspirations. To understand the profound necessity of mastering specialized business communication, we must look beyond shallow modern tutorials and analyze the deep historical architecture of human civilization. Throughout the long, complex tapestry of human history, the rise and fall of great commercial empires, trading networks, and diplomatic alliances have always been governed by a standardized language of commerce, which scholars identify as a lingua franca. The ancient Mediterranean world, merchants from various distant lands had to master the common Greek dialect known as koine to execute legal contracts, trade precious commodities, and navigate administrative systems. During the height of the magnificent Roman Empire, Latin became the absolute language of law, international governance, and maritime trade, ensuring that a merchant in North Africa could seamlessly execute business with an official in Western Europe. In the modern world, English has indisputably become the global lingua franca of the world. 21st century, serving as the universal operating system for international finance, technological innovation, aviation, maritime commerce, diplomacy, and academic research. When an enterprise in Tokyo negotiates a manufacturing agreement with a corporation in Berlin, the entire transaction is negotiated, drafted, and finalized in English. When a software developer in Nairobi seeks venture capital from an investment firm in Silicon Valley, the presentation is delivered in the precise cadence of business English. Specialized form of communication is not an optional luxury or a simple hobby. It is an absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for anyone who desires to participate in the massive wealth and opportunity of the global economy. Let us analyze this foundational linguistic dynamic through a profound historical narrative derived from ancient literature, which serves as a timeless masterclass in the immense power of unified, precise communication. In the ancient records of Genesis, we find the striking narrative of the Tower of Babel, a story that offers deep insights into human psychology and organizational engineering. The ancient text notes that at one point in history, the entire earth used exactly one language and the same specific vocabulary. Because of this complete linguistic unity, the people were able to organize a massive, unprecedented civil engineering project declaring, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a towering structure with its top in the heavens, and let us make a famous name for ourselves. The narrative states that their capacity to collaborate was so absolute that nothing they proposed to do would be impossible for them. However, the project was completely halted not by a physical earthquake, a devastating fire, or a violent military invasion, but by the strategic introduction of linguistic confusion. The moment their speech was fractured, the moment a builder could no longer say, "Understand the precise instructions of the architect," and the moment a coordinator could no longer interpret the feedback of the supplier, total operational paralysis gripped the entire enterprise. They could no longer stay in their lanes. They could no longer execute their specific assignments, and the massive structure was completely abandoned, as the people scattered across the face of the earth. This timeless narrative teaches us an enduring truth. Without a unified, precise, and shared language, even the most ambitious projects, the most brilliant business ideas, and the most hardworking teams will inevitably collapse into chaos, misunderstanding, and bitter failure. In your personal professional life, if you lack the precise vocabulary of business English, you are effectively living in a state of linguistic confusion with the global corporate world. You may understand your specific craft perfectly, but if you cannot articulate your value to an international client, if you cannot write a legally sound, persuasive corporate proposal, or if you cannot navigate a tense board meeting with diplomatic phrasing, the grand tower of your career goals will remain completely unbuilt. This diploma course is designed to restore that essential linguistic unity, allowing you to communicate seamlessly with the architects of global industry. The transformation you will experience throughout this full audio course. Let us thoroughly outline the structural architecture of the 15 modules that comprise this professional diploma. We will introduce each topic using a long descriptive sentence construction, specifically designed to illustrate how these distinct components weave together to form a magnificent tapestry of corporate fluency. We will begin our educational journey with Module 1, which is dedicated to an exhaustive investigation of the core definitions of business. English as contrasted against general English, mapping out the subtle shifts in formality and the foundational workplace vocabulary required to establish your professional identity from the very moment you enter the corporate environment. We will then progress smoothly into Module 2, where we will systematically dissect the complex mechanics of telephone diplomacy, teaching you the exact linguistic formulas necessary to handle professional inquiries, manage difficult customer complaints, and deliver flawless voicemails with absolute emotional composure. From there, we will move into Module 3, which focuses entirely on the architecture of written digital communication, guiding you through the step-by-step process of constructing high-impact email subject lines, framing polite requests, and mastering corporate digital etiquette. Correspondence always commands immediate attention and professional respect. Our journey will continue into Module 4, where we will master the verbal dynamics of corporate meetings and public presentations, providing you with the precise phrases needed to pitch ideas, manage complex agendas, and address difficult questions from stakeholders with unwavering confidence. In Module 5, we will pivot toward personal career advancement by breaking down the anatomy of winning job applications, professional curriculum vitaes, and cover letters, training you to answer difficult behavioral interview questions regarding your strengths and weaknesses with strategic precision. We will then enter Module 6, which expands your written mastery into formal business correspondence, instructing you on the rigorous structural formats required to draft authoritative corporate letters, operational memos, and analytical business reports that adhere to the highest international standards of corporate formality. In Module 7, we will explore the high-stakes theater of commercial negotiations and corporate sales, unveiling the advanced persuasive vocabulary needed to frame offers, navigate complex counteroffers, and close deals with absolute professionalism. Our exploration will then take us into Module 8, which addresses the practical realities of international business travel, equipping you with the essential conversational tools needed to navigate airports, manage transport logistics, and engage in sophisticated networking during corporate dinners. Following this, Module 9 will introduce you to the internal sociology of IT, corporate structures, providing you with a thorough vocabulary to describe various organizational departments, analyze executive roles, and articulate company goals with clarity. We will then delve into the specialized realm of Module 10, which focuses exclusively on finance and banking terminology, ensuring that you can comfortably discuss budgets, manage complex invoices, and speak to international clients about capital allocations without hesitation. In Module 11, we will master the creative language of marketing and advertising, teaching you how to describe products dynamically, interpret market research, and utilize modern social media vocabulary to capture audience attention. We will then move into Module 12, which examines the delicate language of human resources, providing you with the exact phrasing required to deliver constructive feedback. Performance reviews, communicate complex workplace policies, and resolve internal conflicts with managerial grace. In Module 13, we will reinforce your structural foundation by mastering advanced corporate grammar, focusing on the strategic deployment of perfect tenses, passive voice, positioning, and polite modal verbs that elevate the sophistication of your speech. Module 14 will elevate your global perspective by exploring cultural awareness and international business customs, ensuring that you can navigate diverse global environments without causing accidental offense or misunderstanding. Finally, we will conclude with Module 15, which serves as your comprehensive final assessment preparation, synthesizing every piece of vocabulary, phrase, and strategy you have acquired into a master template for lifelong corporate success. As you prepare to dive deeply into this module-by-module curriculum, you must adopt a completely new cognitive perspective regarding the process of language acquisition. Learning business English is not about memorizing abstract rules or studying dry academic textbooks. It is about developing an executive mindset of extreme ownership, structural discipline, and long-term focus. You are training your mind to think with structural logic so that every word that leaves your mouth serves a defined, productive purpose. We will proceed methodically, module by module, allowing you to thoroughly absorb, test, and master the distinct concepts of each section before moving forward to the next level of training. This systematic approach guarantees that your growth will be permanent, compounding over time, like financial interest, until you emerge as an elite global communicator. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 1 of this comprehensive educational curriculum for the Diploma in Business English, an exhaustive multidimensional study specifically engineered to help you master the linguistic foundations, psychological parameters, and executive vocabulary required to establish an authoritative presence in the modern global workplace. In this initial lecture, we must first dismantle a major misconception that hinders the advancement of many ambitious professionals across the globe, that general conversational fluency in the English language is entirely sufficient to guarantee long-term professional success, commercial leadership, and corporate authority. Many individuals spend years developing their casual vocabulary, learning to speak fluidly with friends, watching entertainment media, and navigating casual social environments with absolute ease. Yet the moment they step into a high-stakes corporate boardroom, attempt to negotiate a complex cross-border contract, or draft an official memorandum to external stakeholders, their communication completely breaks down. They find themselves relying on loose phrases, emotional expressions, and ambiguous vocabulary that sound completely out of place in a serious corporate setting. This structural failure occurs because they do not understand that general English and business English are two entirely different linguistic operating systems governed by completely divergent rules, objectives, and psychological structures. To understand the core philosophy of business English, you must recognize that language within the commercial marketplace is not merely a tool for casual self-expression or emotional socialization, but a highly specialized, purpose-driven asset designed to execute transactions, mitigate institutional risks, establish legal clarity, and build long-term economic trust. General English is inherently expressive, personal, flexible, and deeply rooted in colloquial comfort. It is the language of the home, the social gathering, and the neighborhood marketplace, where the primary objective is emotional resonance, personal connection, and relational familiarity. In general English, the rules of structure and tone are fluid, allowing for spontaneous alterations, slang, shortcuts, and emotional variations, because the stakes are low and the participants are operating within an environment of personal comfort. Business English, conversely, is a highly disciplined objective and precision-oriented communication matrix where efficiency, risk management, transparency, and absolute clarity are the supreme laws. In the fast-paced theater of international commerce, a single ambiguous word, an incorrectly positioned adjective, or an inappropriate shift from formal to informal tone can result in catastrophic financial damage, fractured institutional partnerships, protracted legal disputes, or the immediate destruction of an enterprise's professional reputation. Therefore, entering the corporate landscape requires you to execute a conscious, permanent transition from loose expressive speech to strategic transactional communication where every single word is carefully measured for its utility and impact. Let us examine this critical linguistic dichotomy through a powerful, well-known illustration derived from the world of structural engineering to ground this concept in your consciousness with absolute clarity. Consider the difference between a beautiful flowing mountain river and a highly engineered high-pressure industrial pipeline system within a major petroleum refinery. A natural mountain river is magnificent, fluid, and completely unpredictable. It twists and turns spontaneously according to the random topography of the earth. It expands during heavy seasonal rains, it narrows during periods of drought, and it carries various pieces of loose debris along its path. People gather by the river to relax, swim, and enjoy its casual, unregulated beauty. This organic, expressive river represents the expansive landscape of general English. Now contrast that natural river with a high-pressure industrial pipeline matrix engineered from reinforced titanium steel. Every single valve is precisely calibrated. The diameter of the pipe is calculated mathematically to maintain a specific flow rate. The internal pressure is continuously monitored by advanced digital sensors, and any contamination within the fluid is instantly filtered out to prevent a catastrophic explosion or equipment failure. The pipeline does not wander aimlessly across the countryside for aesthetic pleasure. It moves along the shortest, most efficient, and safest path possible to transport valuable energy resources from the source of production to the point of distribution. This highly controlled, purpose-driven, and secure system represents the disciplined domain of business English. When you communicate in the workplace, you must stop speaking like a wandering mountain river and start structuring your sentences like a calibrated industrial pipeline. You are not there to drift or entertain. You are there to deliver valuable information with maximum efficiency and zero contamination, to construct a commanding executive presence within your professional lane. You must systematically replace casual, low-utility general vocabulary with advanced corporate terminology that projects competence, structural discipline, and institutional authority. In casual conversation, an untrained individual will frequently use the verb start when discussing a new project, a corporate initiative, or an internal investigation, stating something simple like, "We are going to start the project next Monday." In the executive arena, this phrasing sounds incredibly amateurish and lacks structural weight. Elevate your articulation. You must deploy high-utility professional verbs such as commence, initiate, or spearhead. Re-engineering the statement as, We shall formally commence the strategic initiative on Monday morning. When a casual speaker notices an error in a financial report, they might say, "We need to fix this problem." A trained business professional understanding the value of analytical precision will state, "We must immediately rectify this operational variance." Instead of telling a client that you will look into an issue, your correspondence must state that you will conduct a comprehensive investigation into the matter. Instead of saying that a company is trying to buy another business, you must utilize the formal term acquire, phrasing it as, "The enterprise intends to acquire the peripheral asset to expand its market share." These vocabulary choices are not merely decorative alterations designed to make your speech sound complex. They are powerful psychological markers that demonstrate to your clients, supervisors, and global competitors that you possess an advanced level of discipline, a deep respect for the corporate environment, and the intellectual capacity to operate at the highest levels of organizational management. The absolute mastery of tone and formality serves as the primary dividing line that separates entry-level employees from advanced executive leaders within any global organization. Within the corporate ecosystem, language must adjust dynamically based on hierarchical lines of authority, external client relationships, the sensitivity of the data being discussed, and the level of legal or financial risk associated with. The communication formal language is not an archaic, outdated tradition designed to slow down interaction. Rather, it serves as an essential psychological cushion that preserves necessary institutional distance, eliminates personal friction, prevents emotional misunderstandings, and ensures that objective rationality always overrides subjective human emotion. When an individual utilizes casual, informal language in a high-stakes professional setting, they inadvertently communicate a severe lack of personal discipline, a deficit of professional education, and a dangerous inability to separate personal comfort from organizational duty. To illustrate the severe organizational consequences of failing to understand the distinction between formal, dignified communication and casual, reckless speech, let us explore profound historical narrative recorded in classic literature concerning the political collapse of King Rehoboam, the son of King Solomon. When Rehoboam ascended to the magnificent throne of Israel, the citizens of the nation approached him with a formal, structured petition requesting a reduction in the heavy administrative burdens, high taxation, and intense labor demands that had been established by his late father during his extensive building campaigns. The elder statesmen of the royal court, who had served as senior diplomats under King Solomon for decades and thoroughly understood the strategic art of political communication, advised the young king to respond to the citizens using gentle, formal, and highly professional language. They explicitly stated that if he spoke kindly, respectfully, and diplomatically to the people at that critical moment, they would serve his administration loyally for generations to come. However, Rehoboam completely rejected the formal, measured wisdom of the senior diplomats and turned instead to the young peers who had grown up with him in an environment of casual privilege, completely isolated from the realities of state governance. These young advisors, lacking any understanding of strategic diplomacy, institutional boundaries, or professional communication protocols, encouraged the king to respond with harsh, aggressive, and informal language to assert his absolute dominance over the population. Rehoboam followed their reckless advice and declared to his people that his smallest finger would be thicker than his father's waist, and that he would discipline them with scorpions rather than whips. Observe the immediate catastrophic breakdown of organizational structure that resulted directly from this immense communication failure. The citizens did not respect his aggressive, informal posture, nor did they surrender to his authority. Rather, they felt deeply insulted, alienated, and completely undervalued by their new leader. The 10 northern tribes of the nation immediately revolted, fracturing the entire kingdom into 2 separate warring factions that never unified again throughout history. Rehoboam lost the vast majority of his empire, not because his military forces were weak, not because his treasury was empty, but because he failed to understand that an institutional leader must always communicate with measured dignity, structural professionalism, and formal awareness, rather than casual arrogance and reckless colloquialisms. Modern professional life. You must actively avoid the Rehoboam error by systematically stripping your workplace communication of informal traps that compromise your authority. Informal language relies heavily on slang, conversational shortcuts, contractions, unverified assumptions, and emotional outbursts. When you write an internal memorandum, deliver an update to a supervisor, or address an external stakeholder, you must completely eliminate casual contractions such as can't, won't, wouldn't, or shouldn't, and replace them with their complete, formal equivalents cannot, will not, would not, and should not. Contractions structurally shorten the visual and auditory weight of your words, which subtly diminishes the perceived seriousness and legality of your message. Furthermore, casual phrases like "hit me up later," "let us catch up," or "text me the details" must be completely transformed into formal structures such as "please contact my office at your earliest convenience," or "let us schedule a formal consultation to analyze the specific parameters of this project." By adopting this elevated standard of sentence construction and vocabulary choice, you shield yourself from misunderstandings, command immediate cognitive respect from your peers, protect your organization from reputational liabilities, and ensure that your professional lane remains entirely clear of personal familiarity that could compromise your corporate advancement. As we bring this extensive opening module to a close, let us summarize the key linguistic structures you must practice to anchor these concepts into your daily workflow. Remember that every interaction you execute in the workplace is an active evaluation of your professional competence. You must intentionally audit your speech and your writing every single hour, ensuring that you are operating within the precise parameters of business English, rather than drifting into the comfortable habits of general English master. The shift from passive descriptive language to active analytical terminology. Choose the path of formal dignity over casual convenience, and let your communication serve as a solid foundation for your long-term corporate success. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 1. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 2 of this comprehensive curriculum for the Diploma in Business English, an exhaustive, multidimensional investigation into the intricate mechanics, linguistic formulas, and psychological dynamics of professional telephony within the global corporate environment. The telephone is a unique and remarkably challenging communication medium because it completely strips away all visual cues, facial expressions, and supportive body language, leaving you entirely dependent upon the clarity of your voice, the precision of your articulation, and the structural correctness of your verbal phrasing. When you converse with a client, a partner, or a corporate stakeholder over a telephone line, your voice becomes the sole representative of your organization's brand, operational efficiency, and core integrity. Therefore, mastering the precise verbal protocols of corporate telephony is an absolute requirement for long-term professional success and career advancement. The process of making and answering a professional business call must never be treated as a routine, casual, spontaneous, or unscripted event. Rather, it must follow a structured, predictable ritual that establishes immediate institutional credibility. When the telephone rings within a professional office environment, answering it with a simple, casual hello, or stating your name in an unverified, questioning tone is entirely unacceptable and projects a severe deficit of corporate discipline. The professional greeting must always consist of 3 distinct, sequential pillars: the formal identification of the organization, the clear pronouncement of your individual name, and a polite, proactive offer of assistance. For example, an executive should state, "Good morning. Thank you for contacting the corporate headquarters of the Global Development Corporation. This is Alexander speaking. How may I facilitate your inquiries today? Structured sentence immediately informs the caller that they have reached the correct institutional destination, establishes personal accountability by providing a clear name, and projects an atmosphere of elite customer service. When you are the initiator of a business call, the linguistic protocol remains equally structured and disciplined. You must immediately identify yourself and your organization before requesting to speak with a specific individual, as failing to do so signals amateurism and a lack of respect for the recipients. Administrative boundaries. A major error committed by untrained professionals is initiating an external call and immediately demanding to speak with a manager without providing any personal identification or institutional context. To execute this correctly, you must utilize precise modal verbs and conditional structures to maintain an elevated level of politeness and executive presence. Instead of demanding, "Give me the director," you must state, "Good afternoon. My name is Victoria, and I am calling on behalf of the International Financial Agency. Could you kindly inform me if the Director of Operations is available for a brief consultation at this moment?" If the individual is not immediately available, you must gracefully transition to the standard phrases of professional delay, such as, "If you could please hold the line for one moment, I shall ascertain his availability," or "May I ask who is calling so that I can document your inquiry with absolute accuracy within our system." Let us now analyze the structural layout of a professional voicemail message and the advanced linguistic strategies required to handle complaints and conflict over the phone without compromising corporate relationships. When leaving a voicemail message, you are creating a permanent audio record that will be analyzed by the recipient. Therefore, your message must be brief, dense with actionable information, and entirely free from filler words, long pauses, or wandering narratives. The architectural blueprint of an elite voicemail consists of 5 specific steps: the formal greeting, the clear identification of your name and company, the explicit statement of the purpose of your call, the precise request for a specific follow-up action, and the slow, deliberate recitation of your contact information. An example of this construction would sound as follows. Harrison: "My name is Julian from the logistics department of the global transport firm. I am calling to formally notify you that the shipping manifest for contract number 409 has been successfully verified. Could you please contact my office before 5 o'clock this evening to confirm the delivery schedule? You can reach me directly on country code 1, area code 555-0192. By structuring your voicemail in this exact manner, you eliminate ambiguity, respect the recipient's finite time, and project an image of supreme professionalism. Operational efficiency. The ultimate test of an executive's command of telephone English occurs when they are confronted with an angry, aggressive, or complaining client over the telephone line. When an individual is shouting or expressing deep frustration into your ear, the natural human instinct is to react defensively, to interrupt the caller, or to match their aggressive vocal tone. This is a fatal professional error that escalates the conflict and destroys organizational reputation. In these high-stakes moments, you must implement the psychological hurl strategy of linguistic decompression. This involves lowering the pitch of your voice, slowing the velocity of your speech, and utilizing absolute unshakable formal structures to de-escalate the caller's emotional volatility. Let us look at a profound historical example of the power of calm, measured verbal response over an aggressive reactionary outburst by observing the historical military narrative of the ancient judge Gideon. After a massive historic military victory against the Midianites, the powerful soldiers of the tribe of Ephraim approached Gideon with intense verbal aggression and fierce complaints, demanding to know why he had not called them to the battlefield at the very beginning of the campaign. Their tone was insulting, confrontational, and highly volatile, threatening to spark an immediate civil war within the nation's ranks. Had Gideon responded with equal anger, defensive pride, or conversational retaliation. A bloody conflict would have been inevitable. Instead, Gideon utilized extreme linguistic diplomatic restraint, responding with a measured, humble, and highly strategic question, stating, "What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, and what was I able to do in comparison with you?" Observe the immediate psychological impact of this controlled communication. The ancient record states that when he spoke these words, their anger toward him completely subsided. Gideon completely disarmed a volatile military crisis, not by using physical force, but by utilizing precise de-escalating verbal communication that validated his critics without surrendering his structural authority. When handling a corporate complaint on the telephone, you must apply the Gideon principle by utilizing phrases of absolute accountability and structural empathy. Never state "that is not my department" or "there is nothing I can do about that." Instead, you must utilize the following precise linguistic sequence. "I understand your frustration completely, Mr. Davis, and I apologize sincerely for the inconvenience this structural delay has caused your operations. Please allow me to take personal ownership of this matter. I shall investigate the systemic cause of this issue immediately and contact you with a comprehensive solution within the hour." This approach immediately shifts the dynamic from a hostile confrontation to a collaborative professional problem-solving process, ensuring you stay firmly in your lane of executive leadership and maintain corporate trust. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 2. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 3 of this academic curriculum. A deep dive exploration into the art, science, and structural engineering of corporate email writing within the international business ecosystem. In the modern workplace, the vast majority of organizational decisions, contractual agreements, and professional relationships are mediated through written digital correspondence. Every email you transmit carries your professional digital signature and serves as a lasting testament to your intellectual clarity, attention to detail, and communication discipline. An unorganized, grammatically reckless email containing casual punctuation or poorly structured paragraphs signals an unorganized, reckless mind. Therefore, mastering the precise structural anatomy of the high-impact corporate email is an absolute necessity for anyone seeking sustainable career advancement and executive presence. The effectiveness of any business email begins long before the recipient reads the first sentence of the body text. It begins with the subject line. The subject line is the gatekeeper of your digital correspondence, determining whether your email is prioritized, delayed, or deleted entirely. A professional subject line must never be vague, emotional, or open-ended. Subject lines consisting of solitary words like urgent, help, question, or checking in are entirely unacceptable in professional communication because they fail to provide actionable context and project a lack of structural discipline. An elite corporate subject line must be dense, specific, and categorized using clear keywords that allow the recipient to immediately understand the nature and urgency of the message. For instance, instead of writing update, you must structure the line as Project Apex Q3 Financial Reporting Manifest Update. Instead of writing meeting, you must structure it as Request for Rescheduling Executive Board Meeting, October 14th. This precise construction allows busy executives to categorize your message instantly within their cognitive workflow. Once the recipient opens the digital document, they must be greeted by a perfectly structured, clean architectural layout that guides their eyes seamlessly through the information. The body of a professional business email consists of 4 specific components: the formal salutation, the explicit statement of purpose, the dense, organized core details, and the actionable follow-up request. The salutation must always respect the hierarchy of the organization. Casual openings such as "Hey guys" or "Hi there" are strictly forbidden in formal correspondence. You must utilize established formal titles such as Dear Director Harrison or Good Morning Dr. Mitchell. If the recipient's name is unknown, you must utilize the traditional phrase to whom it may concern. This formal opening immediately establishes a serious, respectful tone for the interaction. The statement of purpose within your email must be direct, professional, and immediate. Do not waste valuable corporate time with extended casual small talk about the weather or personal life. The opening line should state the primary objective of the correspondence with absolute clarity. For example, you should write, "I am writing this formal correspondence to notify your office of a critical variance in the delivery schedule for Project Alpha," or "the purpose of this email is to secure your formal approval for the revised budgetary allocations outlined below." When making requests within the email body, you must utilize polite conditional linguistic structures that project authority without sounding demanding or aggressive. Instead of writing "send me the files by tomorrow," you must write, "I would highly appreciate it if you could forward the relevant documentation at your earliest convenience before the close of business tomorrow afternoon." Let us now investigate the complex protocols of digital email etiquette, specifically the strategic use of carbon copy, blind carbon copy attachments, and formal digital signatures. The use of carbon copy, commonly known as CC, is an organizational mechanism used to keep relevant stakeholders informed about the progress of a project without requiring them to take direct action. You must never CC an individual arbitrarily, as this clutters their inbox and signals a lack of communication focus. The blind carbon copy function, known as BCC, is a highly sensitive strategic tool that must be utilized with extreme ethical caution and professional discipline. BCC allows you to share an email with a third party without the primary recipient's knowledge. This function should be reserved primarily for risk mitigation, legal documentation, or when sending mass distributions, where protecting the privacy of individual email addresses is required. To illustrate the immense organizational importance of written documentation, clarity, and risk mitigation, let us examine a well-known historical example. Concerning the signing of the historic Magna Carta in the year 1215, King John of England was facing an intense, volatile rebellion from his powerful barons, who were deeply frustrated by his unpredictable arbitrary governance, heavy taxation, and systemic abuse of royal authority. The barons did not rely on loose verbal promises or casual agreements to resolve this intense crisis, because they understood that verbal words can be easily forgotten, distorted, or denied over time. They demanded that the king attach his formal royal seal to a comprehensive, meticulously written charter of rights that explicitly outlined the legal parameters of royal authority, taxation protocols, and justice systems. This written document became a lasting, unshakable architectural foundation for modern constitutional law precisely because it was reduced to writing with absolute structural clarity. In your modern corporate environment, your emails serve as your personal Magna Carta. They are the permanent written records that document your agreements, mitigate operational risks, and protect your professional name from boundary violations. When attaching documents to an email, you must explicitly notify the recipient within the body text using formal phrases such as, "Please find attached the comprehensive budgetary report for your analytical review," or "I have attached the verified contractual agreement for your signature." Furthermore, every professional email must conclude with a standardized, immaculate digital signature block that contains your full legal name, your official corporate title, your department, the name of the organization, your verified contact numbers, and a professional disclaimer regarding data confidentiality. This ensures that every piece of digital data you send projects an image of corporate alignment and elite operational discipline. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 3. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 4 of this advanced curriculum, where we shall thoroughly analyze the linguistic protocols, collaborative dynamics, and presentation delivery systems required to master corporate meetings and international business presentations. In the contemporary corporate environment, meetings serve as the primary arenas where strategic decisions are executed, leadership talent is evaluated, and institutional influence is established. An individual who sits silently in a meeting due to linguistic insecurity, or conversely, someone who speaks randomly without structural focus, will instantly be categorized as an entry-level worker lacking executive potential. Therefore, mastering the precise vocabulary of meeting agendas, minutes, and action points, along with learning how to seamlessly insert your perspective into a corporate discussion, is an absolute prerequisite for long-term career growth and corporate visibility. Before a professional meeting ever commences, it must be structured by a comprehensive document known as the agenda, operational roadmap of the meeting, outlining the specific topics of discussion, the time allocations for each segment, and the objectives to be achieved. When joining a meeting, you must align your vocabulary entirely with the agenda items. The official record of the meeting is documented in a document known as the minutes, which captures the key decisions, structural arguments, and assignments generated during the session. These individual assignments are formally identified as action points, which represent specific, measurable tasks that must be properly executed by designated individuals before the next scheduled meeting. To participate effectively in a high-level meeting, you must learn the precise linguistic formulas for introducing your opinions, agreeing or disagreeing with stakeholders, and interrupting colleagues politely without causing personal offense. When giving an opinion, avoid casual phrases like "I think" or "in my view," as these structures sound deeply subjective and diminish the authority of your statement. Instead, you must utilize objective analytical phrases such as, "Based on the latest market data, it is my professional assessment that we should allocate resources toward the secondary channel," or, "From a strategic perspective, the evidence strongly suggests that initiating this product launch at this moment carries significant risk." Discussion from personal emotions to objective business analysis. The ultimate test of a professional's verbal communication skills occurs when they stand before an audience to deliver a formal business presentation. A presentation is a live demonstration of your leadership capacity, structural thinking, and rhetorical competence. The structural layout of an elite presentation must always consist of 3 clear sequential phases: the formal introduction and framing, the data-driven core body, and the actionable conclusion. Presentation. You must immediately capture the cognitive attention of your audience by stating your purpose and mapping your trajectory. Do not begin by apologizing for your voice or wandering through irrelevant small talk. You should utilize formal opening structures such as "Good morning, members of the board. The primary objective of this presentation today is to provide a comprehensive analysis of our third quarter operational performance and to outline our strategic expansion roadmap for the upcoming fiscal year," into 3 distinct segments, starting with our financial data, moving to our market share evaluation, and concluding with our resource allocation proposal. This clear roadmap immediately settles the audience and positions you as a master of your material. As you transition between different topics, sections of your presentation, you must utilize precise linguistic signposts to guide your audience's attention seamlessly. When pausing to direct attention to visual data, utilize formal transitions such as, "If I could kindly draw your attention to the chart on the screen, you will observe a significant correlation between our marketing investment and consumer acquisition metrics." When concluding your presentation, you must wrap up the information into a single powerful takeaway and issue a core call to action using phrases like, "In conclusion, evidence demonstrates conclusively that staying in our current operational lane will guarantee a 20% increase in efficiency. Therefore, I propose we formally approve this initiative today." Let us explore a magnificent historical example of public speaking, strategic rhetoric, and impeccable question management under intense pressure by analyzing the historic address delivered by the Apostle Paul on the Hill of Mars in ancient Athens as documented in classic historical texts. Paul found himself in a situation of extreme risk, standing before the elite philosophers of the Areopagus, who viewed him as a foreign amateur presenting unverified ideas. Had Paul initiated his address with aggression, colloquial language, or defensive anger, the intellectual elite would have mocked him instantly and driven him from the hill. Instead, Paul implemented an elite rhetorical strategy of cultural alignment and professional framing. He initiated his speech by acknowledging their deep devotion, stating, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are very religious, for as I passed by and examined the chart on the screen, you will observe a significant correlation between our marketing investment and consumer acquisition metrics. Objects of your worship, I found an altar with this inscription, 'To the unknown God.'" Observe how Paul skillfully established a common baseline with his audience by utilizing their own cultural reference points. He did not insult their existing systems, rather he strategically used their own philosophical structures to introduce his unique perspective with absolute clarity, dignity, and undeniable rhetorical power. He handled their complex philosophical inquiries with calm, systematic logic, ensuring he maintained complete control of the intellectual environment throughout his presentation. In your modern corporate presentations, you must apply the Paul framework when transitioning to the highly sensitive final segment, the question and answer session. Managing questions from the audience requires immense emotional control and precise linguistic phrasing, especially when a question is designed to challenge your authority or expose a weakness in your data. Never react defensively or state that is a bad question. Instead, you must utilize precise framing formulas to validate the inquirer while maintaining control of your narrative. If an individual asks a challenging question, respond with, "Thank you for that highly analytical question, Mr. Roberts. You have highlighted a critical variable regarding our risk management framework. Let us address that by examining our secondary contingency protocols. If you do not possess the immediate data required to answer a question, never fabricate an unverified response, as this destroys your credibility. Instead, utilize the formal phrase, 'That is an excellent point that requires absolute precision. Allow me to consult our primary data logs following this meeting, so that I can provide your office with a comprehensive, verified response via email by tomorrow morning.' This response preserves your executive reputation, protects your professional lane, and ensures you remain in absolute control of the corporate interaction. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 4. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 5 of this comprehensive curriculum, where we shall systematically investigate the linguistic mechanics, psychological frameworks, and strategic communication protocols governing job applications and the modern corporate interview process. The process of advancing your career, securing executive roles, and entering new spheres of professional influence is entirely mediated through your command of language. Your curriculum vitae, commonly known as a curriculum vitae, your cover letter, and your verbal interview responses are not merely lists of historical facts. They are highly strategic marketing documents and persuasive arguments designed to prove that you possess the elite competence and structural alignment required to solve an organization's most complex problems. An individual who submits a generic, poorly formatted application or uses casual language during a formal interview will find themselves permanently locked out of high-level career opportunities. The construction of an elite curriculum vitae and cover letter requires a complete shift from passive description to active, data-driven value metrics. When writing your curriculum vitae in English, you must completely eliminate weak passive phrases such as was responsible for or handled tasks. These phrases tell the employer what you were told to do rather than what you actually achieved. Instead, you must initiate every single bullet point with a powerful, high-utility action verb that communicates executive leadership and operational impact. Utilize verbs such as engineered, spearheaded, optimized, orchestrated, harmonized, or consolidated. Furthermore, every action point must be quantified using precise financial or operational metrics. Instead of writing "manage the marketing team," you must structure the sentence as spearheaded a cross-functional marketing matrix of 12 professionals, resulting in a 35% increase in global brand acquisition within the third quarter. This precise language immediately demonstrates your value to the organization. Your cover letter must serve as a bespoke, persuasive narrative that bridges the gap between your historical achievements and the prospective company's future growth strategy. It must follow a rigid formal structure that consists of an explicit opening indicating the role being sought, a dense middle section mapping your skills directly to the company's pain points, closing statement. For example, your opening sentence should read, "I am writing this formal application to express my intense interest in the position of Senior Director of Operations at your international enterprise, as advertised via your corporate portal." The body of the cover letter must utilize advanced conditional sentences to project value, such as, "Given my extensive experience in optimizing logistics frameworks, I am entirely confident that I can seamlessly streamline your supply chain efficiency while mitigating external operational risks." The corporate job interview is a high-stakes, psychologically intense verbal interaction where every single sentence you speak is carefully analyzed by the selection panel. The primary error committed by untrained candidates is treating the interview as a passive interrogation, where they simply answer questions from memory. An executive candidate treats the interview as a collaborative strategic consultation. Your objective is to project an image of absolute competence, emotional stability, and cultural alignment. When answering standard questions regarding your strengths, weaknesses, and professional experience, you must utilize structured verbal frameworks that prevent wandering or emotional expression. When asked to discuss your professional strengths, you must never utilize abstract, unverified adjectives such as, "I am a hard worker," or "I am a people person." These casual descriptors carry absolutely no weight in an executive evaluation. Instead, you must utilize precise professional terminology linked to measurable outcomes, stating, "My primary professional strength resides in systemic operational optimization, which involves analyzing fragmented business workflows and re-engineering them to maximize productivity and reduce overhead expenses." This statement must immediately be supported by a concise narrative utilizing the STAR framework, which stands for situation, task, action, and result. When confronted with a highly sensitive question regarding your professional weaknesses, the interview panel is not seeking a confession of personal failure, nor are they looking for a cliched, insincere response such as, "I work too hard." They are evaluating your level of self-awareness, emotional maturity, and commitment to continuous self-mastery. You must identify a real technical area of development that is not critical to the core functions of the role and immediately couple it with the strategic actions you are currently executing to master it. For example, you should state, "In the past, my intense focus on strategic execution occasionally led me to underutilize the capabilities of peripheral support teams. However, I have actively corrected this variance by implementing weekly cross-departmental alignment briefings, which has significantly enhanced our collaborative output." To appreciate the immense value of strategic preparation, accurate timing, and impeccable self-presentation in high-stakes selection scenarios, let us analyze a profound historical example. From ancient Persian history concerning the strategic presentation of Queen Esther, as documented in classic historical records, Esther found herself in a situation of extreme risk where she needed to secure an immediate critical audience with King Ahasuerus to overturn a decree that threatened the survival of her people. The law of the Persian Empire was absolute and unyielding. Any individual who entered the inner royal court without an explicit invitation from the monarch faced immediate execution unless the king voluntarily extended his golden scepter to spare their life. Esther did not rush into the royal presence impulsively, nor did she rely on casual emotional outbursts to resolve this intense crisis. She engaged in meticulous preparation, selecting her formal royal apparel with absolute precision to project her dignity, respect for the crown, and flawless royal alignment. When she stood in the inner court, her flawless presentation, silent poise, and absolute dignity immediately captured the king's eye, causing him to extend his scepter and grant her request. Furthermore, she did not immediately launch into a desperate plea. Instead, she strategically invited the king to a series of private banquets, managing the timing of her communication with absolute mastery until the psychological environment was perfectly optimized for her ultimate success. She secured the total preservation of her nation, not by using military force, but through the masterclass execution of flawless timing, immaculate presentation, and strategic communication protocol. In your modern career progression, you must apply the Esther framework of flawless presentation and meticulous timing when executing your post-interview correspondence. Within 24 hours of completing your interview, you must transmit a formal, polished follow-up email to the selection panel. This digital document must never sound desperate or demanding. It must structure its appreciation with absolute formality, stating, "Dear members of the selection panel, I am writing to express my sincere appreciation for the opportunity to consult with your office yesterday regarding the senior director role. Our discussion strongly reinforced my professional assessment that my experience in supply chain optimization aligns perfectly with your current strategic objectives. Please do not hesitate to contact my office if you require any additional data regarding my background. I look forward to receiving your formal determination in due course." This post-interview communication solidifies your professional reputation, locks in your positioning, and ensures you remain firmly in the winning lane of executive selection. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 5. I'm sorry, but it looks like there's no text in the input. Could you provide the text again, or clarify what you'd like me to say? Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 6 of this academic curriculum, an intensive and analytical exploration into the mechanics, structures, and linguistic disciplines of corporate business correspondence within the international commercial environment. While digital email communication facilitates rapid daily exchanges, formal business correspondence, including official corporate letters, internal operational memoranda, and comprehensive analytical business reports, remains the legal institutional framework upon which corporate governance, commercial compliance, and permanent organizational records are established. The documentation you produce within this domain serves as a direct indicator of your intellectual organization, your analytical precision, and your capacity to handle high-level corporate responsibilities. An executive who cannot draft an authoritative report or a legally precise corporate letter will inevitably struggle to maintain long-term institutional influence. Therefore, mastering the distinct stylistic blueprints and structural rules of professional written correspondence is an absolute necessity for career longevity and organizational mastery. The drafting of formal business letters requires a strict adherence to traditional layouts and an absolute elimination of personal familiarity. Whether you are writing an official letter of inquiry, executing a complex procurement order, or formally registering a serious institutional complaint, the document must protect your professional lane through absolute stylistic objectivity. The architectural anatomy of an elite corporate letter consists of standard placement elements starting with the sender's address and organization data, followed by the precise chronological date, the inside address of the recipient, a formal salutation, a highly focused opening statement of intent, a data-dense core body, an actionable conclusion, and an appropriate formal closing formula, followed by your signature block. In this environment, you must never utilize casual closing formulas like best regards or warm wishes, as these lack executive weight. You must strictly deploy established traditional formulas such as yours sincerely when addressing an individual whose name is known to you, or yours faithfully when addressing an unverified official title. Let us analyze the distinct linguistic adjustments required when transitioning between a letter of inquiry, an order, and a complaint. When executing a formal inquiry, your language must be precise, brief, and structured to extract clean data, utilizing phrases such as "I am writing to formally request," a comprehensive schedule of your wholesale pricing structures, and distribution capabilities for the upcoming fiscal cycle. When placing a complex commercial order, your vocabulary must focus on contractual certainty, specifying quantities, delivery dates, and financial instruments with absolute precision, using formulas like, "Please accept this correspondence as our formal authorization to purchase 10,000 units of Model Alpha under the parameters outlined in Contract Agreement 409. When formulating an institutional complaint, you must strictly avoid emotional adjectives or aggressive statements, as anger completely diminishes the professional validity of your position. Instead, you must construct a cold, factual narrative that outlines the commercial variance and demands a structural remedy, re-engineering your grievance as, "I am writing to formally notify your office of a critical variance between our verified procurement manifest and the physical delivery received on October 14th. We expect your logistics department to rectify this discrepancy before the close of business tomorrow afternoon." We must now transition our focus to the internal operational tools of corporate governance, specifically the writing of internal operational memoranda and comprehensive analytical business reports. An internal memorandum, commonly known as a memo, is a highly efficient tool designed to transmit critical operational updates, structural policy changes, or systemic directives across departments within an organization. A memo must completely dispense with pleasantries, introductions, or extended narratives. It must begin with a standardized header section containing 4 clear lines: to, from, date, and subject. The body of the memo must immediately deliver the core objective in a dense, actionable format, ensuring that employees can process the directive instantly without cognitive fatigue. For instance, a memo regarding structural policy updates should open with, "This internal memorandum serves as a formal directive to notify all operations personnel of an immediate modification to our security verification protocols." The construction of a comprehensive business report represents the absolute peak of written corporate communication, requiring an advanced synthesis of data visualization, structural taxonomy, absolute passive voice neutrality. A formal business report must be structured using clear hierarchical sections, including a title page, a structured table of contents, an executive summary, a detailed methodology section, a data-dense findings and analysis body, a conclusion, and clear actionable recommendations. The executive summary is the most critical segment of the entire document, as busy senior executives will often read only this section to make high-stakes financial decisions. It must encapsulate the entire report, compressing the primary problem, the analytical findings, and the ultimate strategic recommendations into a single page of absolute clarity. Throughout the findings and analysis sections of the business report, you must systematically utilize the passive voice to maintain an atmosphere of scientific objectivity. Structural neutrality. In casual communication and creative writing, the active voice is preferred to create energy and movement, such as, "We discovered a significant error in the third quarter ledger." In an authoritative corporate report, this active construction sounds subjective and attributes personal blame or emotional bias. You must transform the sentence into the formal passive voice, restructuring it as, "A significant discrepancy was detected within the third quarter financial ledger during our systematic internal audit." Passive construction removes subjective human personalities from the data, focusing the reader's attention entirely on the factual reality of the situation. This linguistic shield protects you from personal friction, reinforces your position as an objective analyst, and ensures your correspondence remains firmly in the lane of executive mastery. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 6. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 7, of this comprehensive curriculum, an advanced and highly strategic investigation into the persuasive rhetoric, cognitive frameworks, and linguistic disciplines governing international commercial negotiations and professional corporate sales. The negotiation room and the sales theater represent the ultimate proving grounds where organizational value is captured, strategic partnerships are cemented, and enterprise growth is accelerated. In these high-stakes environments, language is not merely used to share information, but serves as a precise psychological tool designed to align divergent interests, overcome commercial friction, manage concessions, and secure binding institutional commitments. An individual who approaches a commercial negotiation with loose conversational language or defensive aggression will inevitably compromise their margins and surrender their institutional authority. Therefore, mastering the specific conditional linguistic structures, strategic framing techniques, and closing formulas of sales. Linguistics is an absolute requirement for long-term executive success and market leadership. The architecture of a successful commercial negotiation begins with a thorough understanding of the concept of leverage and the deployment of precise conditional sentences. In high-level deal-making, you must never make an absolute offer or an unconditional concession, as doing so signals strategic vulnerability and invites immediate exploitation by your counterpart. Every single proposal you present must be structurally anchored in a conditional framework utilizing the strategic perfect tenses and advanced modal verbs to manage risk and protect your margins. For example, instead of stating we can reduce our pricing by 5%, you must structure the proposition as a conditional hypothesis, stating, if your organization were to commit to a multi-year procurement contract, we would be entirely prepared to explore a corresponding 5% adjustment in our baseline unit pricing. This precise construction creates an immediate psychological connection between price concessions and volume commitments, ensuring that you never surrender value without capturing an equal asset in return. When your negotiation counterparts present a proposal that threatens your operational margins, you must avoid defensive outbursts or immediate rejections, as emotional volatility completely destroys your position of strength. You must deploy the advanced linguistic technique of the professional counteroffer, framing your dissent in objective data-driven terminology that steers the conversation back into your preferred lane. When navigating a difficult counteroffer, you should utilize formal phrases such as, while we appreciate your perspective regarding the initial capital requirement, our comprehensive market analysis demonstrates that a baseline investment of that magnitude is required to guarantee the operational efficiency your timeline demands. Therefore, we propose an alternative amortization schedule that distributes the financial burden across 3 distinct fiscal phases. This approach changes the dynamic from a hostile confrontation to a collaborative problem-solving consultation, allowing you to defend your boundaries with absolute diplomatic grace. Let us now transition our focus from general negotiation dynamics to the specialized vocabulary and psychological mechanics of the professional sales pitch. A successful corporate sales pitch must completely abandon the amateurish high-pressure tactics of the consumer marketplace, replacing them with an elite consultancy narrative centered around the systematic diagnosis and resolution of an enterprise's core problems. The vocabulary you deploy during a product or service demonstration must focus entirely on value metrics, operational optimization, return on investment, and systemic scalability. Instead of using vague, enthusiastic adjectives like, our software is amazing or our team is great, you must use precise financial and technical terminology stating, our integrated enterprise platform is specifically engineered to eliminate systemic redundancies, resulting in an immediate 25% reduction in processing overhead and a projected full return on investment within the first 2 quarters of execution. To appreciate the immense power of persuasive rhetoric and impeccable timing under intense pressure in high-stakes negotiations, Let us analyze a profound historical narrative derived from ancient literature concerning the extraordinary diplomacy of the patriarch Abraham, as documented in classic historical records. When Abraham received news that the city of Sodom was targeted for absolute destruction due to its systemic moral corruption, he did not accept the decree passively, nor did he launch into an emotional, aggressive protest against the divine authority. He stood before the ultimate judge, initiated a masterclass in progressive conditional negotiation, utilizing an incredibly respectful, yet remarkably bold, rhetorical framework to advocate for the preservation of the innocent population. Observe how Abraham systematically established a series of conditional hypotheses to manage the outcome of the interaction. He approached the altar and asked, "Will you consume the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you consume it and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein?" Receiving an absolute confirmation that the city would be spared for the sake of 50 innocent citizens, Abraham did not stop. Rather, he gracefully and progressively adjusted his parameters, recognizing his own humble position while maintaining his strategic focus. He stated, "Behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, who am but dust and ashes. Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Will you destroy all the city for lack of 5? 5 separate times Abraham executed this precise descending counteroffer framework, systematically lowering the baseline from 50 to 45, then to 40, then to 30, then to 20, and finally to 10 innocent citizens, securing a binding covenant of preservation at every single phase. Abraham completely managed a monumental crisis, not through physical leverage, but through the reconciliation, flawless execution of respectful framing, progressive conditional logic, and unshakable diplomatic persistence. In your modern corporate career, you must apply the Abraham framework of progressive alignment and strategic persistence when transitioning to the final critical phase of the sales process, which is closing the sale professionally. Closed transactions must never sound manipulative or desperate. They must serve as the natural, inevitable conclusion of a thoroughly verified business alignment. You must utilize formal directive closing structures that gently guide the client across the decision threshold while maintaining an atmosphere of elite professionalism. For example, you should deploy formulas such as, "Given that we have successfully verified the alignment between our operational capabilities and your corporate objectives, the next logical step in our process is to formally authorize the preliminary service agreement so that our implementation teams can commence their onboarding protocols on Monday morning." This response preserves your executive reputation, locks in the present moment, captured value, and ensures your operations remain firmly in the winning lane of commercial success. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 7. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 8 of this comprehensive academic curriculum, an intensive investigation into the linguistic protocols, logistics, vocabularies, and strategic networking conventions governing international business travel within the global corporate ecosystem. International travel represents an essential operational extension of the modern enterprise, serves as a primary catalyst for cross-border market expansion, and provides unique, face-to-face environments where critical institutional relationships, are forged and sustained. When an executive steps out of their localized office and enters the international arena, they cross multiple geographic, legal, and cultural borders where their command of language serves as their primary tool for managing logistics and projecting corporate sovereignty. An individual who approaches international travel with a casual, unorganized vocabulary will inevitably experience operational friction, logistical delays, and missed networking opportunities. Therefore, mastering the specific terminology of transport, booking, check-in, diplomacy, structural small talk, and professional networking conversations during corporate dinners is an absolute requirement for global career acceleration. The efficiency of any international business itinerary begins with the precise execution of travel procurement, which involves booking flights, corporate accommodations, and multimodal transit networks using explicit formal structures. When communicating with corporate travel coordinators, airline personnel, or hotel representatives, you must completely eliminate ambiguous phrases and specify your operational parameters with absolute clarity. For example, you should utilize formal procurement formulas such as "I am contacting your office to formally request a verified business class booking for a multi-city itinerary commencing on November 14th, departing from London Heathrow, and arriving at Frankfurt International with a mandatory return leg finalized for November 18th. Furthermore, I require an executive suite reservation at a hotel situated within the financial district that provides complete high-speed digital connectivity and comprehensive business center access. This precise linguistic framework eliminates logistical errors and ensures your transit environment remains fully optimized for continuous productivity. The ultimate test of an executive's communicative flexibility occurs when they navigate airport security structures, hotel check-in desks, and spontaneous logistical variables while traveling. When arriving at an international lodging establishment, your check-in dialogue must follow a structured, polite ritual that commands immediate administrative respect and efficiency. You should state, "Good afternoon, my name is Winston, and I have a verified corporate reservation under the mandate of the Global Development Enterprise. Please find attached my passport and corporate credentials for your administrative processing. Would highly appreciate it if you could verify that my room allocation resides on an upper floor, away from high-traffic corridors, to ensure an optimal environment for my evening consultations. If an operational error arises during your transit, such as a delayed flight or a missing room reservation, you must strictly avoid emotional outbursts, as anger completely destroys your professional leverage. You must deploy precise phrases of accountability and structural escalation stating, 'I understand that this delayed arrival is governed by weather variables. However, given that my international enterprise has a comprehensive service level agreement with your airline, I expect your management team to immediately arrange alternative priority routing or facilitate access to the executive transit lounge so that my operational timeline remains unimpeded.' Let us now transition our focus from transport logistics to the highly sensitive art of corporate networking, casual small talk, and formal conversation during international business dinners. The business dinner is a sophisticated, highly strategic corporate theater that takes place outside the rigid boundaries of the boardroom, yet it functions as an arena where major commercial decisions are subconsciously validated. The primary error committed by amateur professionals during a business dinner is treating the event as a completely unscripted, casual social party, where they speak with unrestrained familiarity or indulge in personal indulgence. An executive understands that a business dinner is a continuation of their professional race, requiring them to maintain their focus while utilizing elegant, open-ended conversational structures to build deep relational trust with international partners. When engaging in small talk during a networking dinner, you must avoid controversial topics like localized politics, sensitive religious doctrines, or deeply personal financial matters, as these subjects create immediate psychological friction. You must steer the conversation into spheres of shared corporate interest, innovation, global macroeconomic trends, and professional history, deploying sophisticated open-ended questions that invite your partners to articulate their visions. For example, you should utilize formulas such as, "It is truly fascinating to observe how rapidly your regional market is adapting to these new technological integration models. From your unique perspective within the industry, what do you anticipate will be the primary driver of operational growth across the next decade?" Or I am deeply interested in learning more about the historical trajectory of your enterprise's expansion into the European sector. What were the primary cultural parameters your leadership team had to navigate during that initial transition? Allow you to gather critical market data while projecting a posture of deep professional respect, humility, and intellectual curiosity. To illustrate the profound institutional impact of cross-border diplomacy, strategic travel preparation, and high-level networking, let us examine the historic narrative of the Queen of Sheba's international embassy to the court of King Solomon, as documented in classic historical records. The Queen of Sheba did not reside in passive isolation, nor did she undertake a massive thousands of kilometers journey across dangerous desert trade routes on a casual whim or without meticulous organization. Upon receiving reports of Solomon's unprecedented wisdom, architectural marvels, and immense economic prosperity, she engineered a grand international expedition specifically designed to test his intellectual capacity, establish high-level diplomatic alignment, and build a permanent maritime trade alliance between their respective nations. Observe the rigorous structural preparation that characterized her arrival in the royal city of Jerusalem. Travel empty-handed. Rather, she arrived with a magnificent high-value caravan comprising camels bearing immense quantities of precious gold, rare spices, and unique gemstones, ensuring her initial physical presentation projected maximum national sovereignty and immense economic capability. When she entered the royal court, she did not engage in casual, meaningless pleasantries. She immediately initiated a sophisticated, high-level intellectual consultation, proving his mind with hard, complex, and deeply philosophical riddles. States that when she had communed with Solomon concerning everything that was in her heart, and when she observed the structural perfection of his palace, the precision of his state hierarchy, and the absolute order of his operations, her breath was completely taken away by the reality of his wisdom. She formally validated his leadership, presented her massive capital gifts, and established a permanent, highly profitable commercial bridge between their empires, achieving a monumental diplomatic triumph entirely through the masterclass execution of strategic travel logistics, flawless self-presentation, and elite intellectual engagement. In your modern global career, you must apply the Sheba framework of flawless self-presentation and strategic networking whenever you wrap up an international business travel assignment. Transition back to your localized operations. You must ensure that the connections you forge during your travel are permanently locked in through systematic follow-up correspondence. Within 48 hours of returning to your home office, you must transmit a formal, polished email to every international stakeholder you met during your journey. This digital document must structure its appreciation with absolute formality, stating, "Dear Director Mitchell, I am writing this formal correspondence to express my sincere appreciation for the extraordinary hospitality your executive team extended to my office during our recent consultations in Frankfurt. Our face-to-face discussions regarding cross-border supply chain integration strongly reinforced my professional assessment that a collaborative alliance between our respective enterprises will yield significant mutual growth. I have already instructed my implementation teams to analyze the preliminary operational frameworks we discussed, and I look forward to presenting our comprehensive proposal during our next event. Scheduled digital consultation. This post-travel communication solidifies your international reputation, protects your professional lane from being forgotten, and ensures your career trajectory remains firmly anchored in the global arena of sustainable long-term success. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 8. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 9 of this comprehensive academic curriculum, an exhaustive systemic investigation into the organizational sociology, specialized vocabularies, and structural hierarchies governing modern corporate enterprises and their respective operational departments. A multinational corporation is not a singular homogeneous entity. Rather, it is a complex, highly integrated socio-economic organism composed of multiple distinct organs, each designed to execute specific vital functions that sustain the greater institutional body. To navigate this corporate architecture with absolute authority, you must look past simple operational descriptions and master the precise linguistic codes that govern the interactive dynamics between separate functional departments, executive leadership lines, and accountability systems. An individual who treats corporate departments as isolated silos or uses vague vocabulary to describe departmental mandates will inevitably fail to build cross-functional alliances and will remain permanently locked out of senior executive governance. Therefore, mastering the specific terminology of human resources, finance, marketing, operations, and corporate governance models is an absolute requirement for cross-functional leadership and enterprise-wide influence. Let us begin our structural deconstruction of the corporate organism by analyzing the precise linguistic frameworks used to define the specialized mandates and interdependencies of primary organizational departments. The first critical organ we must examine is the Department of Human Resources, commonly identified as Human Resources, which serves as the strategic custodian of organizational capital, workforce planning, talent acquisition, and corporate compliance. When articulating the mandate of this department, you must completely eliminate casual phrases such as, "they handle the hiring and firing," replacing them with advanced corporate terminology stating, "The Human Resources Division is strategically tasked with optimizing human capital architectures, implementing rigorous talent acquisition matrices, and governing workplace compliance frameworks to mitigate institutional liability." This department does not merely manage people, it engineers the human framework that permits all other departments to execute their mandates without structural interruption. Directly adjacent to the human capital architecture resides the Department of Finance, vital financial heart of the enterprise, tasked with capital allocation, budgetary oversight, liquidity management, and regulatory financial reporting. When conversing with or about the finance department, your vocabulary must reflect absolute numerical discipline and analytical precision, using phrases such as, "The finance division exercises strict fiduciary stewardship over our capital reserves, orchestrating comprehensive variance analyses on our operational budgets, and verifying that our fiscal structures align with international financial reporting standards." Moving further along the operational chain, we encounter the Department of Marketing, which functions as the primary engine for brand equity creation, market research, consumer acquisition, and revenue pipeline acceleration. The linguistic framework for marketing must completely transcend casual aesthetic descriptions, re-engineering its mandate as the marketing division is responsible for executing advanced consumer segmentation analyses, optimizing digital acquisition ecosystems, and scaling global brand equity to capture incremental market share across divergent demographics. Finally, we arrive at the core machinery of the enterprise, the Department of Operations, which is responsible for supply chain management, quality assurance, workflow optimization, and the physical transformation of capital and materials into finished products or services. The vocabulary of operations is centered around efficiency, throughput, and the elimination of waste, defined as, "The operations division is meticulously engineered to streamline supply chain logistics, maximize production throughput, and enforce rigorous quality assurance protocols to eliminate systemic waste and guarantee absolute product integrity." To function effectively as a corporate leader, you must understand that these departments do not operate in isolation. Rather, they form a synchronized pipeline where a variance in the finance department immediately impacts human resources recruitment, which alters operations capacity and ultimately shifts marketing strategy. Your role is to utilize a standardized formal business language that permits these separate departments to communicate and align their efforts with absolute clarity and zero operational friction. Let us now analyze the hierarchical structures and precise linguistic definitions used to outline specialized executive roles and systemic individual responsibilities within an organization. Governance of a modern enterprise is anchored at the highest tier by the board of directors. an elected body of senior stakeholders tasked with long-term strategic oversight, fiduciary governance, and the protection of shareholder value. The board does not engage in daily operational execution. Rather, they govern the executive management team, which is spearheaded by the Chief Executive Officer, commonly known as the Chief Executive Officer. When describing the executive mandate of the Chief Executive Officer, you must state, the Chief Executive Officer exercises absolute executive authority over the enterprise, orchestrated to translate the long-term strategic vision established by the board into measurable operational milestones across all corporate divisions. Supporting the Chief Executive Officer are specialized C-suite executives, including the Chief Financial Officer, who governs corporate treasury and capital strategy, and the Chief Operations Officer, who directs daily workflow execution and logistics architectures. Below this executive tier reside middle management structures, including divisional directors and department managers, who act as the vital communication conduits, translating executive directives into daily action points for the operational workforce. To appreciate the immense value of a highly organized, decentralized institutional hierarchy and clear lines of operation, structural authority, let us analyze a profound historical paradigm derived from ancient literature concerning the administrative restructuring of the Israelite nation under the leadership of the lawgiver Moses, as documented in classic historical records. Following the historic exodus from Egyptian servitude, Moses found himself in a state of absolute operational paralysis, attempting to act as the sole administrator, judge, and counselor for a population numbering over 2 million individuals. The ancient record states that Moses sat from morning until evening to judge the people, while the entire population stood around him in a state of exhaustion and frustration. Moses was attempting to run a massive national race without any defined lanes, without departments, and without a structural hierarchy. Observe the profound operational analysis delivered by his father-in-law Jethro, who served as a senior priest and seasoned administrator in the wilderness of Midian. Upon observing this chaotic operation, Jethro delivered a stern, data-driven evaluation stating, "The thing that you are doing is not good. You will surely wear away both you and this people that is with you, for this thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to perform it yourself alone." Jethro did not merely criticize the system. He provided an immaculate blueprint for strategic decentralization and hierarchical organization. He instructed Moses to remain as the supreme strategic visionary and divine representative, handling only the most complex, high-stakes national issues, while systematically delegating daily judicial and administrative responsibilities to a structured network of competent, trustworthy leaders. Moses executed this advice with absolute precision, selecting capable men out of all Israel and placing them as heads over the people, establishing a multi-layered organizational hierarchy consisting of rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 10, 50s, and rulers of tens. The historical record notes that these appointed leaders judged the people at all seasons, resolving every small matter within their localized lane of authority, while bringing only the monumental systemic cases directly to Moses. Through this masterclass execution of structural decentralization, workplace delegation, and clear hierarchical division, Moses completely resolved the national operational crisis, restored structural order, protected his own longevity, and established a sustainable governance matrix that endured for decades across the wilderness campaign. In your modern corporate career, you must apply the Moses and Jethro framework of hierarchical precision whenever you articulate corporate performance, departmental goals, and individual responsibilities. When delivering an update to the executive board or mapping out departmental milestones, you must utilize formal structural sentences that define accountability parameters with absolute clarity. For example, you should structure your presentation using formulas such as, in alignment with the strategic directives issued by our executive leadership team, The operations department has successfully calibrated its quarterly milestones to achieve a 15% increase in distribution throughput. Furthermore, we have established clear lines of accountability across our middle management matrix to ensure that individual action points are executed with absolute precision and zero operational variance. This clear language projects an image of profound organizational stability, reinforces your positioning as a structurally disciplined leader, and ensures your career remains firmly anchored in the executive lane of sustainable long-term success. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 9. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 10 of this comprehensive academic curriculum, an exhaustive and analytically rigorous investigation into the specialized terminology, fiduciary vocabularies, and transactional protocols governing corporate finance and banking English within the international marketplace. Capital is the vital life force of any commercial enterprise, providing the necessary fuel for asset procurement, infrastructure expansion, market acquisition, and technological innovation. High-level executive decisions. You must completely transcend casual descriptions of currency and master the precise linguistic codes that govern capital allocation, liquidity strategy, deficit mitigation, and regulatory financial compliance. An individual who speaks about corporate wealth in loose conversational terms will instantly be categorized as an administrative amateur and will be permanently excluded from high-stakes fiscal governance. Therefore, mastering the specific vocabulary of budgets, invoices, credit instruments, and wealth management is an absolute requirement for senior leadership and fiduciary credibility. The maintenance of an enterprise's fiscal health requires an absolute mastery of the vocabulary of corporate budgeting and variance analysis. A corporate budget is not merely a passive list of expenses, but a highly disciplined strategic blueprint that maps out capital deployment against projected revenue streams over a specific fiscal cycle. When presenting a budgetary framework to an executive board, you must utilize precise analytical terminology that projects absolute mathematical control, deploying structures such as our preliminary budgetary allocation for the upcoming fiscal period has been carefully calibrated to prioritize high-yield capital expenditures while systematically optimizing our operational overhead. When analyzing financial performance over time, you must understand how to articulate discrepancies using the formal terminology of variance analysis. If a department exceeds its spending limits, you must never state they spent too much money, as this sounds remarkably uneducated. You must re-engineer the statement as, the division exhibited an unfavorable budgetary variance within the third quarter due to unexpected fluctuations in supply chain procurement costs. Conversely, if an operation costs less than projected, you must identify it as a favorable variance, stating, the automation of our logistics pipeline has generated a highly favorable variance, significantly expanding our net operational margins. Let us now analyze the structural mechanics and formal phrasing required to manage invoices, payment architectures, and professional collections with absolute diplomatic authority. An invoice is a binding legal and financial document that represents value delivered and capital owed. When issuing an invoice or discussing outstanding balances with international clients, your language must maintain an unshakable standard of formal dignity. While enforcing commercial compliance, if a client delays a transaction, you must strictly avoid casual reminders or aggressive threats, as emotional volatility completely compromises your institutional posture. You must utilize progressive formal collection formulas that protect your cash flow without fracturing the client relationship. For example, your initial correspondence regarding an overdue balance should read, "We are writing this formal notification to draw your attention to invoice number 804, which currently exhibits an occupied cash flow. Outstanding balance of $50,000 as the verified credit term specified, a 30-day settlement period from the initial date of execution. We kindly request that your Treasury Department Expedite this wire transfer at your earliest convenience to ensure our continuous commercial alignment by structuring your financial communication in this exact manner. You project absolute administrative control and enforce operational discipline. To appreciate the immense value of sound economic management, absolute integrity, and precise financial governance under conditions of extreme volatility, let us analyze a profound historical narrative derived from ancient literature concerning the macroeconomic strategies executed by the vizier Joseph in the land of Egypt, as documented in classic historical records. Prophetic dreams of 7 impending years of absolute agricultural abundance, followed immediately by 7 years of devastating total famine. Joseph did not suggest passive containment or chaotic spending. Rather, he delivered a masterclass in strategic national budgeting, resource allocation, and macroeconomic risk mitigation. Observe the rigorous structural controls that Joseph established across the entire Egyptian empire during the seasons of prosperity. He advised the crown to implement a systematic 20% agricultural tax throughout the 7 years of abundance, creating a massive national grain reserve. The historical text records that Joseph gathered up all the food of the 7 years and laid up the food in the select cities, storing grain as the sand of the sea until he stopped measuring it because it was completely beyond measure. Joseph did not allow the population to consume their excess wealth wastefully. He enforced an institutional savings mandate that built an unshakable capital reserve. When the 7 years of severe deficit arrived and the famine broke out across all surrounding territories, Egypt remained completely secure because its fiscal assets were perfectly managed. Joseph opened the storehouses, managed the liquidity of the state, and systematically traded grain for currency, then for livestock, and eventually for land titles, completely consolidating the economic authority of the crown while preserving the survival of entire civilizations. He resolved a monumental global crisis entirely through the execution of long-term planning, strict resource budgeting, and absolute administrative sovereignty over the nation's wealth. In your modern professional career, you must apply the Joseph framework of strict fiscal management whenever you negotiate financial instruments, manage credit facilities, or consult with banking institutions regarding capital lines. Institutional loan, a commercial line of credit, or an international wire transfer, you must utilize formal sentences that communicate low risk and high operational competence. You should approach banking partners using precise formulas such as, "Our enterprise is formally requesting an optimization of our current revolving credit facility to support our cross-border infrastructure expansion. Our historical performance demonstrates an unshakable debt service coverage ratio, and we are entirely prepared to submit our fully audited balance sheets and cash flow statements for your underwriting review." This disciplined language projects an image of profound fiduciary stability, ensures you secure optimal interest rates, and keeps your enterprise firmly in the winning lane of long-term commercial prosperity. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 10. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 11 of this comprehensive academic curriculum, an advanced and highly analytical investigation into the specialized terminology, persuasive consumer psychologies, and strategic communicative frameworks governing modern corporate marketing and international advertising linguistics. In the hyper-competitive global marketplace, where a myriad of brands constantly vie for the finite cognitive attention of the modern consumer, language functions as the primary mechanism for brand equity, creation, market differentiation, and value transmission. To participate effectively in high-level brand strategy, you must completely transcend superficial aesthetic descriptions of promotional campaigns and master the precise linguistic codes that govern market research interpretation, demographic segmentation, value proposition framing, and digital acquisition metrics. An individual who speaks about corporate advertising in loose conversational terms will instantly be categorized as a strategic amateur. excluded from corporate revenue governance. Therefore, mastering the specific vocabulary of market analysis, promotional mechanics, and modern digital media ecosystems is an absolute requirement for executive leadership and commercial credibility. The effective deployment of any corporate marketing initiative requires an absolute mastery of the vocabulary of market research and demographic consumer segmentation. A professional marketing campaign must never be launched on arbitrary assumptions or unverified intuitions. Rather, it must serve as the direct data-driven response to a systematic evaluation of market dynamics and consumer behavior metrics. When presenting a market research synthesis to an executive board, you must utilize precise analytical terminology that projects absolute strategic control. Deploying structures such as "Our comprehensive market research indicates a significant consumer migration towards sustainable product alternatives within our primary demographic segment. Therefore, we must calibrate our marketing architecture to capture this incremental demand by highlighting our eco-compatible production methodologies. When analyzing consumer behavior, you must understand how to articulate demographic profiles using the formal terminology of segmentation and psychological profiling. If an initiative is designed to target a specific consumer group, you must never state, "We are selling this to young people who have money," as this sounds remarkably uneducated. You must re-engineer the statement as, "Our strategic value proposition is precisely configured to engage high net worth millennial consumers who display a strong behavioral preference for premium technology integrated service experiences." This precise language immediately shifts the discussion from vague generalized assumptions to concrete, highly actionable consumer profiles. Let us now analyze the structural mechanics and formal phrasing required to craft a compelling value proposition and manage modern digital advertising ecosystems with absolute corporate authority. A value proposition is a precise statement that outlines the unique advantages an enterprise delivers to its consumers, defining exactly why a buyer should select your brand over a competitor. In crafting this narrative, you must completely eliminate generic, overused adjectives like "our product is the best" or "we offer great service," as these cliches carry absolutely no psychological weight. You must utilize explicit technical and operational terminology that demonstrates measurable utility, stating, "Our enterprise logistics software is specifically engineered to automate supply chain route optimization, resulting in an immediate 20% reduction in delivery cycle times and a corresponding decrease in operational overhead costs." Furthermore, when directing digital advertising initiatives, your vocabulary must reflect absolute command over modern performance metrics, moving past casual discussions about internet posts and mastering terms like consumer acquisition cost, customer lifetime value, click-through rates, search engine optimization, and conversion funnel optimization. You should structure your performance briefings using formulas such as, "The strategic implementation of our retargeting ad campaigns has generated a 40% increase in our standard click-through rate, simultaneously optimizing our consumer acquisition cost by 15% across all digital distribution channels." To appreciate the immense power of persuasive positioning, strategic branding, and flawless public presentation under conditions of intense social and economic pressure, let us analyze a profound historical narrative derived from ancient literature concerning the profound marketing and presentation methodology executed by the young shepherd David when presenting his capabilities to King Saul, as documented in classic historical records. When the entire military apparatus of Israel was locked in a state of absolute operational paralysis in the valley of Elah due to the terrifying physical presence and psychological warfare of the Philistine champion Goliath, David did not suggest passive containment or chaotic retreat. Rather, he delivered a masterclass in strategic self-positioning, competitive differentiation, and risk reframing. Observe the rigorous rhetorical strategy that David established when entering the royal pavilion to secure the ultimate combat. Mandate from the king. Saul initially attempted to disqualify David based on conventional structural parameters, stating, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." Had David reacted emotionally or accepted this conventional baseline, his initiative would have died instantly. Instead, David executed an elite reframing matrix, shifting the evaluation from standard military measurements to a completely different lane of specialized operational competence. He presented his historical performance data with absolute clarity, stating, "Your servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Your servant slew both the lion and the bear." David did not offer an unverified hypothesis. He presented a proven track record of successful apex predator eradication to demonstrate his capacity to resolve the current crisis. He then strategically defined his unique competitive advantage, explaining that his operational capacity was backed by an unshakable vertical alignment with divine authority, which completely neutralized Goliath's physical and technological advantages. David won the royal mandate, altered the psychological landscape of the entire nation, and executed a monumental historical triumph entirely through the masterclass execution of strategic self-positioning, flawless rhetorical alignment, and an unshakable confidence in his unique lane of gifting. In your modern professional career, you must apply the David framework of strategic positioning and value articulation whenever you launch marketing campaigns, pitch advertising concepts, or define your brand's unique market share acceleration strategy. When proposing a major expansion of an enterprise advertising budget or launching a new product line, you must utilize formal sentences that communicate minimal market risk and maximum financial return. You should approach corporate stakeholders using precise formulas such as, "Our marketing division is formally requesting a strategic capital allocation to initiate an expansive multi-channel advertising campaign. Our data-driven predictive modeling demonstrates a guaranteed return on ad spend that far exceeds our baseline threshold, and we are entirely prepared to submit our comprehensive consumer segmentation analyses and conversion metrics for executive oversight review." This disciplined language projects an image of profound commercial stability, ensures you secure executive buy-in for your creative concepts, and keeps your enterprise firmly in the winning lane of long-term global market dominance. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 11. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 12 of this comprehensive academic curriculum, an advanced and highly analytical investigation into the specialized terminology, psychological frameworks, and strategic communicative structures governing modern corporate human resources English within the international marketplace. Human capital represents the foundational infrastructure of any commercial organization, serving as the primary driver of corporate innovation, operational execution, and long-term enterprise scalability. Participate effectively as an elite organizational leader, you must completely transcend superficial descriptions of personnel management and master the precise linguistic codes that govern talent acquisition, strategic performance evaluation, workplace compliance policing, and advanced conflict mediation protocols. An individual who speaks about employee dynamics in loose conversational terms will instantly be categorized as an administrative amateur and will be permanently excluded from executive human capital governance. Mastering the specific vocabulary of recruitment, performance matrix analysis, workplace policy enforcement, and professional dispute resolution is an absolute requirement for senior management and corporate credibility. The maintenance of an enterprise's operational efficiency requires an absolute mastery of the vocabulary of strategic recruitment, onboarding, and talent acquisition metrics. A professional talent search is not merely a passive exercise in filling empty desks, but a highly disciplined, data-driven alignment process designed to match elite individual skill sets with the long-term strategic milestones of the organization. When presenting an acquisition proposal to an executive leadership team, you must utilize precise professional terminology that projects absolute administrative control, deploying structures such as our global talent acquisition pipeline has been meticulously configured to source high-tier executive candidates who exhibit a proven track record of operational optimization and cultural synergy within decentralized corporate architectures. When evaluating employee output over a specific fiscal cycle, you must understand how to articulate performance metrics using the formal terminology of structural reviews and performance diagnostics. If an employee or a department fails to meet organizational standards, you must never state they are doing a bad job and we might fire them, as this sounds remarkably uneducated and exposes the enterprise to severe legal vulnerabilities. You must re-engineer the statement using formal corporate phrasing, stating the individual has exhibited a significant performance variance relative to our established key performance indicators. Consequently, our management matrix has formally initiated a structured performance improvement plan to facilitate immediate operational alignment. This precise language immediately shifts the discussion from subjective personal criticism to objective, metrics-based operational development. Let us now analyze the structural mechanics and formal phrasing required to manage workplace policies, compliance frameworks, and professional conflict resolution with absolute managerial authority. A workplace compliance document is a binding organizational mandate that establishes the behavioral boundaries and legal safeguards of the enterprise. When enforcing these parameters or conducting sensitive performance reviews, your language must maintain an unshakable standard of formal dignity, ensuring total alignment with labor laws and institutional ethics. If internal conflict manifests between separate corporate departments or individual team members, you must strictly avoid casual interventions or taking subjective personal sides, as emotional bias completely compromises your managerial authority. Progressive, formal dispute resolution formulas that de-escalate emotional volatility while reinforcing the structural values of the organization. For example, your initial correspondence regarding a workplace variance should read, "This formal notification serves to document a critical non-compliance issue regarding our established corporate governance protocols. We expect all personnel to maintain an unshakable alignment with our code of conduct, and our department has initiated a comprehensive internal investigation to ensure that immediate corrective actions are executed with absolute transparency." By structuring your human resource communication in this exact manner, you project absolute administrative control and enforce operational discipline. To appreciate the immense value of sound organizational management, executive delegation, and the execution of absolute justice under conditions of intense systemic growth, let us analyze a profound historical narrative derived from ancient literature concerning the monumental judicial and organizational frameworks executed by King Solomon when resolving an intense, highly volatile parental dispute, as documented in classic historical records. When two women living in the same domicile approached the royal throne, presenting completely contradictory testimonies regarding a single living infant, Solomon did not rely on superficial intuition, nor did he allow the emotional chaos of the courtroom to cloud his judgment. Rather, he delivered a masterclass in psychological profiling, strategic crisis provocation, and absolute judicial equity. Observe the rigorous, structural controls that Solomon established within his executive chamber to extract the absolute truth from a fractured narrative. He did not engage in endless unverified debates. Instead, he issued a startling hyperformal directive designed to trigger the raw, primitive biological instincts of the true stakeholder, declaring, "Bring me a sword, Divide the living child in two and give half to the one and half to the other. Solomon did not intend to execute this violent decree. Rather, he utilized this intense operational provocation as a diagnostic matrix to identify the authentic mother. The historical text records that the woman whose the living child was spoke out in intense, emotional, agonizing pleading for the child's life to be spared at any cost, even if it meant surrendering custody to her rival, while the fraudulent claimant embraced the destructive equality of the decree, stating, "Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divided." Solomon instantly analyzed this behavioral data, revoked the provisional decree, and awarded the infant to the true mother, completely restoring structural justice while solidifying the absolute respect and psychological authority of the crown across the entire civilized world. He resolved a monumental, unscripted human crisis entirely through the execution of advanced psychological discernment, absolute emotional control, and an unshakable commitment to structural equity within his lane of judgment. Assignment: in your modern professional career, you must apply the Solomon framework of absolute objectivity and strategic discernment whenever you navigate employee grievances, execute termination protocols, or lead cross-functional human capital alignments. When orchestrating a formal termination, a separation agreement, or a redundancy transition, you must utilize formal sentences that communicate absolute adherence to legal compliance and organizational integrity. You should address human capital stakeholders using precise formulas, such as, in strict alignment with our corporate compliance guidelines and current labor regulations, our enterprise has executed a formal separation protocol regarding the affected operational assets. We have compiled fully documented performance audits and compliance reports for legal verification, and we are entirely prepared to manage this transition with the highest standard of professional dignity and administrative transparency. This disciplined language projects an image of profound managerial stability, protects the enterprise from external litigation risks, and keeps your career path firmly anchored in the executive lane of sustainable long-term success. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 12. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 13 of this comprehensive academic curriculum, an intensive and analytical investigation into the structural mechanics, advanced syntax systems, and precise grammatical frameworks governing high-level corporate business English within the international marketplace. In the executive arena, grammar is not merely a collection of abstract academic rules designed for linguistic ornamentation. Rather, it functions as the absolute structural engineering of your thoughts, establishing the legal certainty of your written contracts, the logical clarity of your strategic proposals, and the authoritative weight of your verbal declarations. An individual who misplaces a temporal tense, misaligns a conditional clause, or utilizes an inappropriate active construction during a high-stakes corporate brief will instantly communicate a deficit of intellectual discipline and will be systematically excluded from senior executive governance. Therefore, mastering the precise deployment of the present perfect tense, the strategic positioning of the passive voice within formal reports, and the advanced utilization of polite modal verbs is an absolute requirement for long-term career advancement and corporate credibility. The architecture of professional temporal expression requires an absolute mastery of the present perfect tense as a mechanism to bridge historical actions with current corporate realities. In general English, individuals rely heavily on the simple past tense to describe completed events, stating something simple like, "We changed the marketing strategy last month." Structure is grammatically correct in a casual setting. It fails to convey the ongoing strategic relevance of the action within an executive workflow. In business English, you must deploy the present perfect tense to highlight the compounding impact of historical data on present operational outcomes, structuring your sentence. Updates using formulas such as, "Our enterprise has successfully re-engineered its supply chain logistics over the past 2 quarters," and as a direct consequence, we are currently experiencing a 20% reduction in operational overhead expenses. This precise construction shifts the cognitive focus from a dead historical point to an active, continuous state of organizational optimization, reinforcing your position as a forward-thinking manager who tracks compounding progress. Let us now analyze the structural mechanics of advanced conditional sentences and the precise integration of modal verbs to navigate sensitive business relationships with absolute diplomatic authority. High-stakes corporate strategy is frequently governed by hypothetical risk management and predictive modeling, requiring you to construct sentences that project variable outcomes with absolute precision. When discussing future corporate trajectories, you must master the second and third conditional structures to manage expectations and delineate liabilities without sounding uncertain. Weak. Instead of stating a blunt, unverified hypothesis like, if we lose the client, we will lose money, you must utilize an elevated conditional syntax stating, if our organization were to experience a variance in client retention within the upcoming fiscal cycle, we would immediately deploy our secondary capital reserves to stabilize our operational margins. Furthermore, you must couple these conditional systems with precise modal verbs such as should, must, and could to inject an unshakable standard of formal politeness into your authoritative directives, transforming a blunt command like, you must submit the report today, into an elite corporate request stating, it would be highly advantageous if your department could transmit the fully verified analytical report before the close of business this afternoon. To illustrate the immense organizational power of precise written language, absolute structural clarity, and the unyielding preservation of grammatical and legal boundaries under conditions of intense political pressure. Let us examine the historic narrative of the Roman governor Pontius Pilate when finalizing the formal public inscription placed upon the cross at Calvary, as documented in classic historical records. When Pilate drafted the official title declaring Jesus of Nazareth the King of the Jews, he did not select his words casually, nor did he construct the phrase based on immediate emotional reactions. Rather, he executed an absolute binding administrative decree written in 3 distinct global languages, Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, ensuring that every single citizen across the vast empire could process the legal statement with absolute clarity. Observe the profound structural confrontation that materialized as soon as the inscription was displayed to the public. The powerful chief priests of the Jews, deeply offended by the authoritative absolute nature of the statement, rushed to the governor's palace to demand an immediate modification of the text's grammar, shouting, "Write not the King of the Jews, but that he said, 'I am King of the Jews.'" Look closely at the psychological trap they were attempting to execute. They wanted Pilate to alter the structural framing from an objective absolute declaration of factual reality into a weak subjective quote of an unverified individual claim, which would have completely neutralized the administrative authority of the governor's decree. Pilate, thoroughly understanding his sovereign lane of governance and the absolute permanence of the written word, completely rejected their manipulative pressure, delivering an immortal, grammatically unshakable response, stating, "What I have written, I have written." Pilate refused to allow horizontal pressure to alter his official record, protecting the integrity of his architectural text, and demonstrating that a true leader never permits external noise to modify a finalized formal declaration. In your modern professional career, you must apply the Pilate framework of unyielding structural integrity whenever you utilize the passive voice to draft authoritative business reports, internal audits, and operational compliance updates. As we analyzed briefly in previous modules, the active voice attributes personal actions and subjective personalities to data, which can create intense friction during internal investigations. Mastering advanced passive voice positioning, you remove subjective human bias from the text, ensuring that your reports remain completely focused on objective realities. You should structure your corporate findings using precise formulas such as, a critical compliance variance was detected within the information technology infrastructure during our systematic quarterly audit, and immediate corrective actions have been initiated by our security matrix to eliminate further operational risk, shields you from personal confrontations, establishes an atmosphere of scientific neutrality within your organization, and keeps your career trajectory firmly anchored in the executive lane of sustainable long-term success. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 13. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 14 of this comprehensive academic curriculum, an advanced and highly diplomatic investigation into the specialized terminology, psychological paradigms, and cross-cultural communicative frameworks governing international corporate customs and global business etiquette. In an increasingly integrated global economy where corporate transactions routinely transcend national borders, geographic boundaries, and divergent social histories, cultural awareness functions as a vital instrument of institutional stability, international brand protection, and strategic relational leverage. To participate effectively as a leader of a multinational enterprise, you must completely transcend localized behavioral assumptions and master the precise linguistic and social codes that govern intercultural negotiations, formal international greetings, high-stakes corporate hosting, and the systemic avoidance of costly cross-border misunderstandings. An individual who approaches an international commercial venture with loose, culturally insensitive language or parochial behavior will instantly alienate foreign partners, fracture multi-million-dollar deals, and permanently destroy their organization's global reputation. Therefore, mastering the specific vocabulary of cultural adaptability, international diplomacy, and cross-cultural corporate customs is an absolute requirement for global leadership and marketplace authority. The effective deployment of any international commercial initiative requires an absolute mastery of the vocabulary of cultural custom, intelligence, cognitive flexibility, and contextual adaptation. International business customs must never be treated as superficial novelties or arbitrary social preferences. Rather, they must serve as deeply ingrained institutional systems that dictate how trust is manufactured, how hierarchical authority is respected, and how binding commercial commitments are honored, are secured across separate civilizations. When organizing an international joint venture or addressing a diverse global consortium, you must utilize precise analytical terminology that projects absolute strategic control. Deploying structures such as our global expansion strategy has been meticulously configured to respect the cultural paradigms and sociolinguistic protocols of our international counterparts, thus ensuring complete operational harmony and maximizing our cross-border brand integration. International corporate cultures, you must understand how to navigate and articulate the profound differences between high-context and low-context communication environments. In low-context corporate environments such as those typically found in North America and Western Europe, communication is highly direct, explicit, and entirely dependent upon the literal wording of a written document, where individuals say exactly what they mean and mean exactly what they say. If you are operating within a low-context lane, you must utilize explicit, definitive terminology stating, "Our enterprise requires an absolute written confirmation of your procurement volumes before the close of business this afternoon." Conversely, in high-context corporate environments, such as those characteristic of East Asia and the Middle East, communication is deeply implicit, layered, and heavily dependent upon nonverbal cues, historical relationships, and the preservation of personal and collective dignity, commonly identified as face. If you are operating within a high-context lane, you must never utilize blunt, aggressive ultimatums, as doing so signals a catastrophic deficit of respect and will immediately paralyze the negotiation. You must re-engineer your phrasing to project extreme diplomatic deference, stating, "We are entirely confident that our mutual commitment to long-term operational harmony will guide this initiative to a highly successful and prosperous conclusion for both of our esteemed enterprises." Let us now analyze the structural mechanics and formal phrasing required to execute flawless international greetings, navigate cross-border corporate customs, and manage international hosting with absolute administrative authority. A formal greeting is the initial psychological gatekeeper of any international relationship, establishing the baseline of respect and defining the hierarchical dynamics of the interaction. Communication and self-presentation. You must completely eliminate casual, localized gestures or overly familiar greetings, as these colloquialisms carry an immense risk of accidental offense. You must utilize explicit technical and operational terminology that demonstrates deep cultural reverence and institutional discipline. For example, when engaging with corporate executives from Japan, your vocabulary and behavior must demonstrate complete alignment with the principles of corporate hierarchy and collective consensus, utilizing phrases such as, "It is a profound honor to formally convene with the senior leadership of your esteemed corporation. We highly revere your historical contributions to the global marketplace, and we look forward to conducting this consultation with the highest standard of transparency and mutual alignment." Furthermore, when hosting international delegates for a high-stakes networking dinner, your vocabulary must reflect absolute command over dietary restrictions, protocol arrangements, and cross-border gift-giving etiquette. Hosting and mastering terms like diplomatic protocol, cross-cultural alignment, and institutional hospitality, structuring your opening briefings using formulas such as, "In honor of our international partners, our office has meticulously calibrated this evening's corporate dinner to strictly mirror the formal hospitality customs and culinary preferences of your home region, ensuring a seamless environment for our continued strategic consultations." To appreciate the immense power of cross-cultural adaptability, flawless international diplomacy, and strategic self-presentation under conditions of intense political and cultural friction, let us analyze a profound historical narrative derived from ancient literature concerning the extraordinary global diplomacy executed by the Persian governor Nehemiah when managing his dual identity within a foreign imperial port. Documented in classic historical records, Nehemiah did not serve as a common uneducated laborer in a localized province. Rather, he occupied one of the most high-stakes, culturally sensitive roles in the ancient world, serving as the official royal cupbearer to King Artaxerxes of the massive Achaemenid Empire. This unique role required an unshakable mastery of imperial Persian etiquette, absolute emotional containment, and flawless cross-cultural alignment, as any deviation from the rigorous protocols of the royal court could be interpreted as treason and resulted in immediate execution. Observe the intense structural and cultural crisis that materialized when Nehemiah received devastating news regarding the absolute destruction of his ancestral city's walls. The ancient text records that he wept, fasted, and prayed in private for days, yet when his scheduled season arrived to serve the foreign monarch, he had to completely suppress his personal grief and don his immaculate imperial persona, entering the royal chambers with absolute poise. The king, possessing deep psychological discernment, instantly noticed a subtle variance in his countenance, asking, "Why is your face sad, seeing you are not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart." Nehemiah records that he was sore afraid, because displaying sorrow in the presence of the Persian king was a severe breach of court protocol that usually carried a death sentence. Had Nehemiah reacted emotionally panicked or delivered a blunt, unscripted political demand, his life and his mission would have been extinguished instantly. Instead, he executed an elite cross-cultural reframing strategy, utilizing the supreme formal language of the Persian court to validate the monarch before introducing his personal petition. He bowed and declared, "Let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad when the city, the place of my fathers?" A death sentence. Had Nehemiah reacted emotionally panicked or delivered a blunt, unscripted political demand, his life and his mission would have been extinguished instantly. Instead, he executed an elite cross-cultural reframing strategy, utilizing the supreme formal language of the Persian court to validate the monarch before introducing his personal petition. He bowed and declared, "Let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad when the city, the place of my fathers' sepulchres, lies waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire?" Observe how Nehemiah strategically avoided framing his grief as a political rebellion against Persia. Instead, he aligned his narrative with the universal cultural value that the king deeply respected, the sacred honor due to the burial places of one's ancestors. The king was so deeply moved by this culturally precise, highly respectful presentation that he immediately granted Nehemiah royal permission, an imperial military escort, and letters of safe passage to execute his historic mission. Reconstruction project. Nehemiah achieved a monumental diplomatic triumph entirely through the masterclass execution of emotional discipline, flawless cross-cultural rhetoric, and an unshakable mastery of his lane of assignment within a foreign empire. In your modern professional career, you must apply the Nehemiah framework of cultural alignment and rigorous diplomatic protocol whenever you lead international operations, manage cross-border teams, or execute global joint ventures. When proposing an international commercial expansion, navigating an intercultural misunderstanding, you must utilize formal sentences that communicate minimal risk and maximum relational respect. You should address global corporate stakeholders using precise formulas, such as, "Our enterprise is formally requesting an immediate optimization of our international communication protocols to facilitate absolute clarity between our respective regional offices. Our data-driven predictive modeling demonstrates that aligning our operational workflows with your local marketplace customs will guarantee a highly favorable outcome, and we are entirely prepared to submit our comprehensive compliance frameworks for executive oversight review." This disciplined language projects an image of profound commercial maturity, ensures you secure global buy-in for your strategic visions, and keeps your enterprise firmly in the winning lane of long-term global market dominance. This completely concludes our extensive review and study of Module 14. Welcome to the formal commencement of Module 15 of this comprehensive academic curriculum, the final definitive capstone chapter of the Diploma in Business English, specifically engineered to help you synthesize, consolidate, and master every critical linguistic mechanism, communicative protocol, and vocabulary system you have acquired across this multidimensional course. This final preparation phase represents your transition from a student of corporate communication to an autonomous architect of executive language. Deploying advanced corporate vocabulary, structural phone protocols, elite digital correspondence, and persuasive negotiation rhetoric with absolute fluency and zero operational variance. To excel in your final professional evaluations and command unshakable authority in the global marketplace, you must completely transcend passive recognition of these concepts and demonstrate the intellectual capacity to execute them dynamically under intense professional pressure. Therefore, mastering this final comprehensive synthesis, reviewing these integrated communication templates, is an absolute requirement for graduation and global corporate sovereignty. Let us begin our final analytical synthesis by systematically reviewing the primary linguistic adaptations you must confidently execute across the core dimensions of corporate commerce. When navigating the foundational landscapes of Module 1 through Module 3, your focus must remain entirely on the systematic elimination of conversational ambiguity and the rigid enforcement of workplace formality. Ensure that low-utility verbs like fix, start, buy, and change are permanently deleted from your mental lexicon and replaced with their executive counterparts: rectify, commence, acquire, and modify. When executing the phone protocols mastered in Module 2, your voice must instantly project institutional stability through a three-pillared greeting. Sequence reaffirming your organization's brand, your professional identity, and a proactive offer of assistance. Furthermore, When translating these concepts into the digital email networks of Module 3, your subject lines must remain dense and searchable, your salutations must respect organizational hierarchies, and your body text must utilize conditional syntax matrices to mitigate risk and enforce professional boundaries without generating personal friction. We must now synthesize the advanced verbal and written competencies developed from Module 4 through Module 12, specifically focusing on public presentation mechanics, job selection rhetoric, and specialized departmental vocabularies. When standing before an executive audience in the meetings theater of Module 4, you must utilize precise linguistic signposts to guide cognitive attention and manage difficult inquiries using validation formulas that preserve your operational control. When advancing your career using the strategic frameworks of Module 5, your curriculum vitae must be driven by quantified action verbs, your cover letters must leverage conditional value propositions, and your interview responses must utilize the structured STAR model to articulate your strengths and weaknesses with extreme emotional maturity. Furthermore, as you execute formal written letters, internal memos, and analytical reports under the guidance of Module 6, you must enforce passive voice neutrality to eliminate subjective personal bias from your data logs. This written precision must then be coupled with the financial discipline of Module 10, the persuasive consumer positioning of Module 11, and the compliance policing of Module 12, ensuring we can comfortably speak to global partners about capital allocations, market segmentation metrics, and human capital realignments with absolute administrative authority. To appreciate the immense necessity of thorough preparation, complete mental synthesis, and absolute structural readiness before facing a defining life evaluation, let us analyze a profound historical narrative derived from ancient literature concerning the flawless examination performance executed by 4 young scholars, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, within the elite Imperial Academy of Babylon, as documented in classic historical records. Following their relocation to the heart of the Babylonian Empire, these 4 young men were selected by royal decree to enter a highly rigorous 3-year academic and cultural immersion program overseen by the master of the eunuchs, designed to train them in the complex tongue sciences and administrative arts of the Chaldeans before they could stand as senior advisors before the throne of King Nebuchadnezzar. They did not treat this extensive preparation phase as a casual part-time educational endeavor, nor did they compromise their internal values or allow horizontal distractions to corrupt their focus. Rather, they pursued an unyielding path of mental discipline, structural containment, and vertical spiritual alignment, choosing a pristine lifestyle of water and pulse over the luxurious yet culturally contaminating provisions of the king's royal table. Observe the extraordinary outcome of this intense compounding preparation. When the season of their final imperial assessment materialized at the conclusion of the 3-year cycle, King Nebuchadnezzar convened a formal face-to-face oral examination panel to personally test the intellectual competence, rhetorical clarity, and strategic problem-solving capacities of all graduating scholars from across the vast empire. The ancient text records that when the king communed with them, among all the candidates examined, none was found equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they were formally selected to stand in permanent service before the royal presence. Furthermore, the historical narrative notes that in all matters of wisdom and analytical understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. These young men did not win their elite positions through random luck or spontaneous charisma. They dominated a rigorous imperial examination because their seasons of quiet preparation were flawless. Their mastery of the specialized language was absolute, and their commitment to staying in their lane of excellence was unshakable. They completely transformed a volatile hostage situation into an immortal demonstration of leadership authority, entirely through the execution of comprehensive academic readiness and intellectual sovereignty. In your modern career trajectory, you must apply the Daniel framework of comprehensive academic preparation whenever you face executive performance reviews, final diploma examinations, or global commercial pitches. As you wrap up this 15-module journey, you must commit to a lifestyle of continuous self-mastery, reviewing these audio archives consistently, practicing these syntax models daily, and guarding your mental environment from the toxic distractions of horizontal comparison. When you sit for your final professional evaluations or step into the boardroom to command your next market victory, you must utilize the absolute definitive language of commerce, structuring your closing declarations using precise formulas such as having successfully completed a comprehensive synthesis of our operational guidelines and communication metrics, entirely prepared to execute our corporate mandates with absolute precision. Our track record demonstrates an unshakable commitment to systemic optimization, and we look forward to driving sustainable long-term value across all global sectors. This disciplined alignment projects an image of supreme professional readiness, guarantees your transition into the highest tiers of corporate influence, and ensures your life journey remains firmly anchored in the winning lane of absolute peace, divine purpose, and sustainable long-term success. This completely concludes our full curriculum for the Diploma in Business English full course. Thank you so much for taking your valuable time to watch this comprehensive, deeply transformative, educational video series and full audio course for the Diploma in Business English to its complete conclusion. Profound Principles of Corporate Linguistics, Telephone Diplomacy, Strategic Digital Correspondence, Public Speaking, Rhetoric, and Cross-Cultural Business Etiquette have brought immense clarity, executive confidence, and inspiration to your life's professional journey. If this message has resonated with your spirit and added tangible value to your personal development, we kindly ask you to support our expanding digital channel by sending stars, leaving a detailed comment with your thoughts, reactions, or personal breakthroughs, and sharing this video link directly with your friends, family members, professional colleagues, and social media communities so that we can spread this vital message to thousands of individuals across the globe who are currently seeking career advancement and trying to break free from comparison. For those generous and visionary viewers who are willing and capable of supporting our educational ministry financially so that we can continue producing this high-quality, deeply researched, life-changing content, you can kindly send your donations directly to our EcoCash number. Every single contribution, no matter the size, helps us improve our academic research, enhance our production values, maintain our digital systems, and reach more struggling professionals and students around the world. In addition to our regular educational content, we also provide professional digital marketing services designed specifically to help you grow your personal or business social media accounts, optimize your online visibility, or successfully get your digital platforms monetized to generate sustainable monthly revenue. So please, do not hesitate to contact us via WhatsApp if you are interested in utilizing our premium services. For more detailed information, strategic consultations, and current pricing models, we are here to help you scale your digital presence and capture real value efficiently. Of our global community who have specific questions, personal challenges, communication blocks, or complex workplace issues that you would like us to analyze from a psychological, linguistic, or tactical perspective, you can leave them directly in the comments section below or send us a private message. We will respond to your queries directly in the text or create a completely dedicated, comprehensive educational video addressing your unique situation while preserving your absolute privacy by keeping you entirely anonymous as a confidential case study. Thank you once again for your incredible support. Stay firmly in your designated lane of purpose. Run your unique race with absolute excellence, and may long-term success, divine purpose, and deep, unshakable peace accompany you every single step of your destiny walk.